As you all know, we're a liberal congregation that welcomes anyone, regardless of background, religion, color, or whatever, sexual orientation, whatever. You're here, and we welcome you. My name is Harvey Winter. I've been a member since 2018. And I'm going to end my embarrassment by having our minister, Pat Jobe, come up for the opening words.
Harvey did the whatever words in his welcome. And when I was the minister at the UU in Greenville, South Carolina, Gabriel asked me to add fashion sense. She said, we welcome all, regardless of race, creed, color, national origin, or fashion sense. Our opening words come from Abraham Maslow. Give people affection and security, and they will give affection and be secure in their feelings and their behavior.
We're going to light the chalice now, and please follow along with the words that are in your order of service. We have matches. We light this flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In our search for truth, may we be just. In our search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace.
Okay, those of you who want to hear a story for all ages, come over here. I'm going to be with Miles and Oliver. You can sit here. You can sit here with these guys. You can sit in the boys section. Okay, last week, I promised Lyndon that I would bring a story about a half woman, half horse. And you guys need to know that in ancient Greece, they had these half women, half horses. There were also half men, half horses, and they were called centaurs. But the one, you knew that. I knew you knew that. I knew you knew that. And the half woman, half horse we're talking about today's name was Jasmine. And Jasmine had a superpower. And everybody knew she had a superpower. And as she galloped around the countryside, people would come up to her. Well, we don't know how she got it. We don't know how she got it. It was magic. She was born with it. And so people would come up to her when they saw her, because she was very unusual looking. For one thing, she was half horse and half woman. And I'm sorry? Did your daddy do that? No, your daddy did not do that. Your daddy was not even around in ancient Greece. So people come up to her and would say, Jasmine, what is your superpower? And she wouldn't tell them. She wouldn't tell them. She stopped, this farmer stopped her, and he said, what is your superpower? And she said, what do you think my superpower is? And he said, I think you know how to fly. And she said, no, I don't know how to fly. I don't know how to fly. I can gallop because I have a horse body. She said, I'm a woman from here up, but I'm a horse from here back. So I can gallop like a horse. You're still thinking this is audience participation. You were thinking that last week too. I remember we had this problem. So then she went up to a cook, and the cook was cooking, and the cook said, what is your superpower? Everybody wants to know what your superpower is. And she said, I'm not going to tell you what my superpower is, but I will let you guess. And the cook guessed, I bet you can walk through walls. I bet you just walk up to a wall and you just go right through. And she said, no, that's not my superpower. And this went on and on and on. And finally, her mother called her aside. And, yes, her mother. And her mother said, honey, Jasmine, you got to let the secret out of the bag. You got to tell what your superpower is. And she said, well, Mama, I will tell you, and then you can tell other people what my superpower is. And she said, okay, what is it? What is it? She said, I am myself. You guys can go to your classes. Go now, please. Go now, please.
You all know Reverend Pat, and Reverend Pat is here to speak to us today about can we respect at least some of others' beliefs. And he will be joined by Lucy Hoffman, who he will introduce.
I will indeed. We're going to listen to some centering music from Mike Allen. Thank you, Mike. Lucy, come on up here while I subject you to my introduction. Lucy Hoffman is a dear friend and was a member when I was at the Greenville UU, and we had a great time together talking about all kinds of issues. I know that I should be reading from her resume. She is a distinguished teacher. She is a scholar of the Holocaust. But most importantly, she is someone who has been nice to me. And I always like that. I always like that in another person. We are eventually this morning going to get to the idea of respecting other people's beliefs. But before we do, Lucy's got a story she wants to tell you, and she's going to start in just a second. But before she starts, I need to tell you that yesterday at the event Harvey referred to, the Unity and Community event, and Natalie was there too. It's a great organization. I hope all of you will eventually check it out and be involved. They have a board up where they talk about what their principles are. And one of them is a respect for other people's beliefs.
Really?
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool. Take it away, boss.
When I first met Pat, I grew up in Lincolnton, North Carolina. And Pat grew up in Weatherfordton, Forest City.
Yeah.
So I felt like he was a twin instead of a minister. And one thing I would tell you, if you wake up from a dream, an outer body experience, don't call Pat. Because then you have to drive 2 hours to help him give a sermon.
Use that microphone, Lucy.
Okay, this one. All right.
They help you with the mic.
So as I guess a kind of foreshadowing here of what I'm going to tell you is we've remained very close friends, and I call him my spiritual advisor. So when I have a dilemma in my life, after I bore my husband, this is my husband, Jeff Hoffman, right here. After I bore him to death with it, I call Pat to see what I really should do. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer in August of last year. So I've been dealing with that and trying to figure out what to do, because there are lots of options, which I would never have guessed, but there are lots of options. So I will be having a mastectomy next Friday. If you guys have any healing thoughts you'd like to share, send them my way. I'll be at Duke. So just shoot them toward Durham and I'll be happy to take them. I had my normal my mammogram in August, and they called me back. Found something suspicious, which happened to me in 2021, and it was just a water-filled sac. So I wasn't terribly concerned about it. Went back and had an ultrasound, and they said they found something. They didn't do an MRI. So they took it out, and they said it was benign. But then my oncologist, which they gave me the option of going to see, be very careful with taking care of your health, be proactive. And he sent me for an MRI, and they found something else, which they would have found the first time if they'd done an MRI. So please be very proactive when it comes to your health. I didn't question where the MRI came from. It actually came from the oncologist, not my surgeon. I kept on following what they told me to do. I did not know at that time that my oncologist was the one who ordered the MRI, not my surgeon. I went for the MRI. This time it showed another growth that did not show up on the first ultrasound. When I saw this one on the ultrasound, the first one, you can kind of see, for all those of you who have had mammograms or have ultrasounds, not mammograms, you can see the screen if you're positioned correctly. And on the first one, it looked like a little puzzle piece. It had little angular sections. The second one looked like a tadpole. So I could see distinct differences in what they look like. So they set me up for the meetings with the doctors. So I had a meeting with a lymphologist. Is that what they're called? And I had a meeting with a surgeon. And by this time, my niece, who is brother is a Harvard surgeon, had already started screaming malpractice. And, you know, I have 3 attorneys in my family. I don't want to go in that direction. So I asked him, I said, why didn't you do an MRI the first time? And he said, well, with your numbers and your evaluations, we don't do MRIs on that. And I said, well, I think you ought to start thinking about it, because this could all be over for me. And he apologized, which doesn't do a whole lot of good. So I went for a second opinion at Duke. I was set up with, the 3 doctors. I was set up with a surgeon here or in Greenville. I was set up with the oncologist, who I really liked, and the radiologist oncologist. It's amazing how many doctors you get to see when you have cancer. It was a bit overwhelming, but was something I needed to know. My middle son and my husband went with me, as I was sure I would not remember half of what I heard, and to ask questions of which I wouldn't think. And if you know me at all, I ask all kind of questions. But I knew that I was going to emotionally bottom out and not really hear what he said. When my surgeon came in, I told him I was going for the second appointment, or second opinion, and he asked me if I wanted him to leave, which I took. He thought I was criticizing him, and I said, no, I'd like to hear what you have to say. So he stayed and gave me his opinion. Lumpectomy or a mastectomy. However, a lot depended on the genetic test if I chose to take one. Not you're going to get a genetic test if you want one. Again, please be proactive. Of course you want one. So I had a genetic test, negative for everything. My sister died of ovarian cancer. I still have my ovaries, so if I had tested positive for ovarian cancer, they would take those out. But I was negative. Negative for breast cancer, so we don't know where it came from. Nobody in my family has it. But we don't eat like we used to, do we? My grandmother cooked everything from scratch. She lived to 95. Yeah, I stop at Arby's occasionally. So in Greenville, I had a choice of a lumpectomy or a mastectomy. And the genetic test was negative. 9 genes have been identified that will tell you if you are likely to have cancer. And all were negative. Okay, the oncologist came in next. He wrote my diagnosis on the board, which meant little to me. As I explained it, as he explained it, I was diagnosed with stage 1A breast cancer, and again assured me that this was the smallest cancer he diagnosed, and felt confident that surgery would take it all, and quite easily. The oncologist came in next. He also reviewed my diagnosis and too felt confident that I would have little problem beating this. He added that he would suggest 15 rounds of radiation with a lumpectomy. I don't want radiation. If anybody's done any research on radiation or had radiation, I don't want it. So, depending on my oncotype score, which they can't tell until they take the cancer out, I don't know if I'll need chemotherapy. I don't want that either. But I won't know until they actually remove the cancer. I survived thyroid cancer when I was 18, so this is my second cancer. I can beat this again. Of course, what I'm not looking forward to is the processes I will need to journey through while getting to the other healthy side. And I'm not going to tell you that I've started exercising and lie about that, because I haven't. But I'm not afraid I'm going to die. I would prefer not to have surgery again, nor radiation, to say nothing about chemo. I will do what I need to do and follow my medical team with good behavior, sort of. They also told me to stop drinking wine, that alcohol contributes to cancer. And I told them if that's going to take 3 years from my life, I'll give it up. I'm not stopping to drink wine. I love wine. That's not happening. The one thing that continues to bother me is that had I had an MRI in August, this could be all over. When I think, why is this happening to me? I use my therapist's language and change it to, and she's done a really good job with this. Don't say, why is this happening to me? Why is it happening for me? And when she first told me that, I went, have you lost your mind? Where did you get your degree? Did I not check that before I hired you? But if you really do it, and you really sincerely do it, I can now see cancer as a gift. Because I'm writing again. I've written 6 books. They didn't do very well. But I love to write. I write on Facebook a lot. I get a lot of comments. Some are not so nice. But I'm type A personality, if you can't tell. And I love public speaking, and I love controversy. So that doesn't bother me at all. In fact, I'm a little upset if somebody's not upset with what I've written. I don't think Pat writes quite like I do. He's a better writer than I am.
New.
Yes, you are. So I think there's someone I need to help who will be much sicker than me. I don't feel sick. I don't feel bad at all. Um, and maybe my experience will help someone else. I'm working on staying positive, writing down my doctor's appointments. God, there's so many. And how I hate 85, you guys can't imagine, driving to Duke. And we're going to have to go at least, 6 more times? Also, there's a breast cancer patient page on Facebook that I've learned a lot from. It's a private page. You can't get approved unless you've got cancer. But I have learned so much from women who've dealt with a lot worse than I have. In my youth, I believed in spiritual intervention in people's lives. I don't know if I believe in that anymore, except now I kind of have to. I didn't think there were huge miracles, just little ones who showed up and helped you just when you needed it. Recently, yeah, okay, that's the one I overdid. The interesting thing with Duke is they say the first cancer was malignant. Greenville says the first cancer was benign. Duke is 21st in the country in cancer treatment. It makes a difference. So I'm glad I went for the second opinion. On the day after I made my appointment, my first appointment with Duke was the 24th, but the plastic surgeon and the surgeon had to make their calendars work. I was trying to decide what to do for the day when I got up. I am semi-retired from my health after the diagnosis. Suddenly but quietly, I heard my father's voice in my head. My father died when I was 18. So I haven't heard his voice in 50 years. He said, "Lucy, maybe it's time you come home." So I laid there and I looked around the room. No one was there. I called several people and told them this story. Some said they had no idea what it meant. I also had no idea. My middle son pointed out that it could be something different than what I originally thought, and it could mean many things. I suppose the death from breast cancer came to mind immediately, even knowing I have a minor cancer that can be easily cured. But even I don't think that's what it means. And now it's your turn.
Lucy, maybe it's time for you to come home. So, as she said, if you have one of these experiences, don't call me on the phone, because then you'll be up here talking about your experience. One of the things, well, first of all, the phone call absolutely rocked my world. You can just imagine what it's like to get a phone call from somebody like Lucy, who's very well read, who's very left brain, who's very type A, as she just confessed. And she says that she hears her father's voice saying, maybe it's time to come home. It's a radical experience. But before I reflect on that, I want you all to know that Lucy is truly a sensational person. If she were a pro football player instead of a teacher, you all would have already heard of her. And that's one of the things that's wrong with our culture is we know a lot about pro football players. We don't really know enough about great teachers like Lucy. The impact of the phone call came in waves, at least some of which came after I got off the phone. But let's start with her being certain that she heard her father's voice say, "Lucy, maybe it's time for you to come home." Followed by her processing the message in her father's voice with several friends and family. Is she dying after a recent cancer diagnosis? Or, as one relative suggested, does she simply need to come home to God? As most of you know, that